Hey guys, it's Maria. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, hi, welcome. You might want to subscribe because I post videos every single Monday and Thursday and you don't want to miss them. So hit that subscribe button and the notification bell down below. Today we're going to change it up a little bit with a review, and I've been doing a little bit more reviews on this channel lately. You guys seem to like them. So we're just going to be talking about a practice planner. This is Molto Music's Musicians Practice Planner, a weekly lesson planner for music students. So let's jump into the review. I was using this planner for a few weeks, made some notes on it, and then totally destroyed my old one. So I ordered a new one. It doesn't have anything written in it, but that's not because I didn't use it. I just ordered a new one because I totally destroyed the old one. I also gave it to a few of my students to try out, but let's jump into the review so I can tell you what I think about it. You guys may or may not know that I have a soft spot for organization, planning, planners, agendas, making lists, to-do lists, journaling, just writing things down, keeping notebooks, all of that stuff. So I've been on the hunt for a good practice planner or a practice planner system that I could kind of implement, like a bullet journal style notebook, for a long time. But I find that no matter what system you choose to follow, having a practice planner can make such a big difference on your motivation, your efficiency, your organization, and just overall having a sense of direction and purpose in your practice. So Molto Music being a trusted musical brand, I thought that they would have some cool practice tips and tools that I could use in my practice organization. I'm going to talk to you about that, the pros and the cons, what I honestly thought of this planner. Let's get into it. So starting with the positives, you open the book, there's some contact information, blah, 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 and then they have a long 2-page explanation about how to use this planner with examples of how to fill it in. So there's a teacher's page on one side, and then there's a student page on the other side, and I really appreciate that they took the time to fake fill it out or give you a little example of how to use it, especially because there's no content accompanying it. There's no tutorials explaining how to use the planner. So that was really helpful in understanding where they're coming from when they give you these organizational tools. And I just want to say this isn't the first practice planner format or practice planner period that I have tried out, and I found that if the practice planners don't have an explanation or an example of how to fill them out, it's hard to get into the brain of the person who created the practice planner and to use it in a way that's actually going to help you and make your practice easier rather than force you to learn a whole new system. That being said, let's move on to the actual contents of the planner. So this I wasn't really a fan of. The whole planner consists of 2 pages, just over and over and over. So the same pages that they were explaining in the manual. There's the teacher's side on one side and the student side, and that's basically the whole planner. I'm not going to count how many pages there are. They're not numbered. And then there's 3 sheets of staff paper at the back. For such a repetitive book of practice planning, I guess I maybe expected a little bit more staff paper at the back. I always like to take notes when I'm practicing, so if I'm like distracted or something comes to mind, I really don't want to get up and get a paper and start writing it down because that distracts me from my practice. So having some note-taking space in my practice planner is something that I've always been looking for. Let's take a closer look at the pages themselves. So starting with the teacher's side, you have space for today's date at the top, and this tells you that the planner is not dated. And let me know in the comments what your guys' thoughts are on this, because I always prefer a dated planner or agenda. I want to purchase a planner at the beginning of the school year and just keep it for the entire duration of the year. I don't want to like worry about running out of pages, and I certainly don't want to worry about having to write in the date for every single week or every single day that I'm practicing. I find that just to be an extra step that I could easily have avoided by just getting a dated planner. But on the other hand, of course, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, for the people who prefer the non-dated planners, it's because you can reuse the pages over and over and over. You're not pressed for time. If you want to take a week off, you still have that option with the practice planner. So again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe that is the reason most people who don't like dated planners don't like dated planners. Next, still on the teacher's page, you have a table of all the elements of music making that you may cover during a lesson. And there's 4 different categories, and each category has a main section and a specific goals section. So the first category they have is scales in warm-ups, and I super agree with this category. I always try to start my lessons with my students with a few scales, especially if they haven't been like warming up or they just came to the lesson. However, when it came to the 2 tables that they provided, so remember they have a normal table and a specific goals table, I wasn't quite sure what they wanted me to put in there. I don't know how I would divide scales and warm-ups into skills and warm-ups, the main thing, and then skills and warm-ups specific goals. To me, if I would write skills and warm-ups down for a student, it would be the actual scales, so like D major, and then I would write the details in there as well, just beside the D major scale. D major, remember to not have a droopy wrist, or something like that. I don't see why you need to separate those 2 things. I actually feel like it could be more useful to bunch them together. And let me know if you guys agree with me on this. I'm really curious to know what you guys think about all this. Moving on, we have etudes and exercises, and this was also like a questionable category, at least for me. I understand how you would have etudes in a separate category from skills and warm-ups, but to me, exercises are kind of like I guess like a Venn diagram. Like they overlap with skills and warm-ups, but also with your repertoire, because I do break, I mean, you guys see in my practice vlogs, I break different difficult sections into specific exercises that go together with that specific section in my repertoire. So in that way, exercises are super helpful when it comes to practicing your repertoire. I always thought of etudes as part of your repertoire, like it was kind of in the same category for me in my brain. But I understand, for example, the RCM, the Royal Conservatory of Music exams, they differentiate between repertoire and then etudes and technical tests. So etudes, scales, ear training, sight reading, all that stuff. Still though, I'm not really sure I would put etudes and exercises in the same category. And I feel like because they took the time to write out the different categories in the planner, I don't have much freedom to like create my own categories that I would like to use during the lesson. So that's why I'm kind of getting into the nitty gritty. I feel like I'm being a negative Nancy right now, but I'm really trying to get to the bottom of these categories so I can make sense of them. And so far it's not quite lining up. So all that being said, exercises kind of have 2 places in this table, since they wanted to write it out in a table. I think it belongs both in scales and warm-ups and in repertoire. Okay, so moving on, we have repertoire, and this is the category I most agree with because they didn't touch it. Just repertoire, and you have specific goals for your repertoire, which makes total sense. However, I would still not, similar to what I said in the scales section, I don't think I would separate like list of pieces and then list of specific goals. I would probably group the goals in with the pieces and kind of intertwine them, just so it's visually easier to see what you actually have to do during the week, because that's the whole point of having this teacher side of the practice plan, is so the teacher does all the work for the student to make sure the student totally understands what they have to do. But yeah, that was one of my favorite categories, or I guess the least problematic of the categories. It was just repertoire and just some space for the details, which was great. Okay, let's move on. We have other. And to me, other means literally anything that has to do with not playing your pieces or your scales. So theory, sight reading, ear training, improvisation, maybe composition, transcriptions, any of that stuff that doesn't have to do with you actually learning and playing your pieces or practicing your scales. So that's really self-explanatory, and I feel like this is the only category when they give you the freedom to choose whatever you want to put in it, which I love. I love having that flexibility, whether like, you know, as a student or as a teacher. So now that we covered the 4 elements that are in the practice planner, I just want to give you my 2 cents on how I organize and plan my lessons for my students. I've always found that focusing on more than 3 aspects at a time in a lesson is not the way to go. The exception being if you have a younger student that really has trouble focusing and you really have to switch it up, you know, about like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes per activity or else they lose focus. Then of course you have to have lots of activities planned. And again, I feel like since they wrote out the specific categories for you, you have one of two choices. You can either try your best to fill out and cover every single category, every single week, and every single lesson with your student and risk overwhelming them or even making them quit, who knows. Or if you choose to simplify and focus on just 2 or 3 elements during a lesson, then it's not going to be very satisfying to write down. You're going to have gaps and empty spaces. So I'm not exactly a fan of the way they structured it because I feel like it's so rigid that you have no choice but to follow their system. And for most students, this system is not exactly going to work. And at the end of the table, they have special notes for the week. So I wasn't exactly sure what they meant by this. So I went ahead and looked at their example page to see how they wanted me to fill it out. And it was basically words of encouragement, special notes to the parents, and books or recordings to purchase for next time or just in general. And I did plan this video out ahead of time, but as I'm saying this, I just realized now this reminds me more of a form that an examiner would fill out during an exam, kind of trying to cover all the aspects of the music learning experience. And usually exams do end with some, words of encouragement at the end and some next steps or something like that. So maybe this is where they took inspiration from exam papers, but I feel like exams and lessons are vastly different. An exam is where you kind of show off your skills that you spent all year learning. It's very detailed, it's very intense, and you're truly being marked on every single thing that you're doing, whereas in a lesson, you have the freedom, or should have the freedom, to focus on 1, 2, 3 aspects, keep it simple, and really focus on learning, not showing off the skills that you've been perfecting all year. Sorry, that just really clicked for me right now. It's just this literally looks like an exam paper. But going back to the special notes for the week section, apart from the words of encouragement, all of the other things they ask the teacher to put in there, I would rather do directly with the parents, whether that's in an email, sending them a list of books, or if you want to speak to them about the performance of their child, you really want to do that in private. You don't want to write special notes to the parents in the child's notebook. And sorry, I feel like I'm spending too much time on this one page, the teacher's page, but there is so much to cover, and I am a teacher, so I have a lot to say. Moving on, we have one line of music staff, so one music stave here. Not even a grand staff, which kind of confused me because whether you're a beginner or advanced piano player, at least for piano, maybe it's an instrument-specific thing, but I always need 2 lines, like a grand staff, to explain things to my students, whether that's explaining treble clef and bass clef and how the notes go all the way up. And for a more advanced student, say they're doing like SATB voice leading or something like that, you would also need 2 staves to explain that. So I'm not really sure what the idea was here with 1 line, and they didn't include it in the explanation. So I don't know. And at the very bottom of the page, we have next lesson, date and time, and please bring to your next lesson. So just some notes on what you're going to bring to the next lesson. Again, that kind of overlaps with what you would tell the parents, I feel like, with buying new books and all that stuff. And don't even get me started on the date and time of your next lesson. That's something, at least in my experience, that should be scheduled weekly. I don't think it should be like wishy-washy, and it's really just too much writing for the teacher, I feel, because the teacher's not going to be writing this during the week. That's the other thing. The teacher's going to be spending that valuable lesson time writing all of this stuff in the journal. And of course, you have to strike a balance between writing too much and not writing at all, because if you write too much, you've spent that precious, playing time or explaining time just writing. But if you don't write at all, then you come into the next lesson as the teacher not remembering what you covered. It's unorganized. It doesn't have direction. So you definitely do need to take notes for yourself and for the student during the lesson. But I don't think that you need to take this many notes, especially with so many of the categories being so repetitive. I really don't think it's necessary. All right, and we're finally moving on to the student section of this planner. So it starts with practice priorities. You have a nice big space to write down what you're going to be practicing, and this is my favorite part of this planner because they don't tell you what you need to write in it. They give you the freedom to write whatever you want. You can practice, you can choose to start with some scales, you can choose to start with your pieces, your etudes, you can choose to start with some sight reading to warm up. I really, really love that, both as a student and as a teacher, giving students that independence, that autonomy to do whatever they want with their practice time as long as they are moving towards completing their goals during the week. So next they have metronome markings, and they have 3 lines there, and time spent, and they also have 3 lines. So let's stop and talk about that for a second. What they're meaning, as I understand it, is that every single element of your practice that you covered during your session needs to have a metronome marking to go along with it, which is not accurate, at least in my experience. I don't practice everything with metronome, especially when you're just learning a piece. You definitely don't want to rush yourself with any metronome. When you're just sight reading, you don't need metronome. There are just so many things that you need to practice every single day that do not require metronome. So to me, it was just a little weird why they put the metronome in there as like a requirement. And also, moving on to the time spent, it was a little bit too much detailed work, too much micromanaging to write down how much time you spent on each piece. Not to mention, when I'm practicing, and let me know if you guys feel the same way, the practice room is meant to be a creative space. Obviously, you need to have a plan and a direction and some organization involved to make sure you're on the right track and you're not just like a floating blob, just like not knowing what you're doing. But it is a creative space. And so giving yourself that freedom to, you know, jump around from piece to piece. Maybe you want to work on your Beethoven for a little bit, then you move on to some Mozart, and then you go back to the Beethoven, then you forgot that you did your scales. You want to be able to have that freedom to jump around and not kind of put yourself in a box, put some blinders on, and just, okay, now I'm doing Beethoven, then we move on to the next thing. And I feel like the way they wrote the time spent is exactly what I just said. You spend time on one thing, write down how long you did it, that means you're done. You can't come back to it because that means you're gonna have to erase it and put some more time in there. So I really don't see why you need to divide the time you spent practicing between the pieces. What I do love is their last section, total practice time. That is very, very good to track. You really want to know, you know, you practiced 2 hours one day and then you went off and like did 4 hours the next day, then you were tired, did 30 minutes the next day. And then at the end of the week, it's really, really useful to go back and look at your the pattern of your productivity and efficiency at the end of the week. And that's basically everything the student gets. They just get that times 7. And that's another thing I love about this planner is thank you for giving me the freedom to choose what day I want to take off, if any. There are so many planners that, first of all, like don't even have a Sunday for some reason. And for me, that was very, very annoying because being at school, Sunday was one of my more free days where I wanted to practice even more. And so as much as I loved dated planners, I hated the fact that some of them didn't even have a Sunday. Some of them had a Sunday and a Saturday, but they were tiny and I didn't get as much space as for the weekdays. So I really appreciate that they just say day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They give you 7 days and you choose how you spend those days. You don't have to practice every single day. You can practice every single day. So really having that freedom. I think I'm all about like freedom and flexibility when it comes to a planner system. I really love that. I want to be in charge of my own time at the piano, and I certainly want to give that same feeling of control to my students when they're practicing. And again, as I said at the beginning, the entire planner is basically a repeat of these 2 pages, which I was kind of surprised to see. I was honestly expecting, especially from such a reputable music brand, that they would take the time to design and offer a few organizational tools for music practice. I was excited to see those, but you know, it is what it is. These are useful if you use them in the way that you want. I feel like using them with a grain of salt and still being flexible with how you plan your lessons and your practice sessions is really going to help you if you want to still use this planner. But as far as the hunt for the perfect practice planner, it is not over yet. We're still looking for the perfect practice planner. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And again, I feel like if I was a little too negative, forgive me. I was just sharing my personal experience with you guys about this planner, all my thoughts, unfiltered. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments how you organize your practice and your thoughts on this planner in general. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and if you want to watch some more of my videos, you can do that right here. And I'll see you guys on Thursday. Bye.